Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, my dear students, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are and at any time you are watching, just wishing you all the best, wishing you good time with me in this lecture and in the other lectures. Okay, today is our first lecture. It's sort of a general introduction and also brief introduction to the American literature, and with let's say another short and very brief historical background about the discovery of the United States and the establishment of the United States as a country. It's something, let's say, for your general knowledge, let's say, and I think most of what I'm going to say about the United States, about America, mostly known by most of you. So just the first thing to draw your attention to is the discovery of the United States of America. As you all know, the United States of America was discovered by a Portuguese explorer, discoverer, called Christopher Columbus, and that was in 1492 in Gregorian, of course, calendar. And that was by accident, because Christopher Columbus thought that he was going to discover a new route to India. And when he got to the coast of the United States out to America, he thought that he was in India, not in the States. Later on, another sailor and discoverer called Amerigo Vespucci, okay, traveled to that part of the world, where Christopher Columbus first, traveled, and he announced that, this place is not India or any part of Asia. It's a new world, and it was called the New World, and it is, and it was named America, after his name. So America was named after this, sailor or explorer who was called, Amerigo Vespucci. Okay, it's just general for your general knowledge. And then we come to the history of establishing the United States, because the United States started, as a number of colonies of about 13 colonies all through the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, particularly on the east coast of the Atlantic Ocean, and there were about 13 colonies, and the first of these was Virginia, okay, and these were all English, British, English or British colonies, okay. Then some more colonies were added to these 13 colonies. The people of the east, of the north, were famous of being involved in industry. So it was the industrial part of the country, and then the south was the agricultural part. And there was sort of a war, between the two parts of the United States, sort of a civil war, and then ended with the announcing the dependence of the United States after this Revolutionary War, and the two parts of the United States were united after this civil war, and they were not anymore part of Britain, and that was in 1776 when they announced their independence from Great Britain. Okay, and the people of these colonies were a mixture of British people, and people from other parts of Europe. And then some more, colonies were added, taken from other, colonists like France, Spain, okay, and Russia. The war between the south and north of the country, on the rights about, the states of America, ended up, by, sort of an agreement, and that was, that put an end to the trade of, slaves, to end the slavery, trade. Then in 1945, in the recent days, after the Second World War, in 1945, the Second World War, after this war, the United States, emerged, appeared as a global power, as a great power, as a nuclear power, a country that owned nuclear power, and as a permanent also member of the United Nations, and one of the also establishing members of the what is called the NATO. Okay, and it's now considered to be the only global power, after Russia, or the Soviet Union, okay, was, let's say, dissolved, or the Soviet Union wasn't anymore a union. It was divided into different states, so it wasn't as strong as before. Okay, this is just a general introduction to the United States and its history and the establishment of this country. Okay, and then we come here to, as you see on page 1, okay, slide 1, in the contents. Here we start with the talking about the literature of the United States, okay, the American literature, and we talk about famous prominent figures, literary figures of our early figures of the American literature. And as we know, and we have to remember that American literature is sort of an extension. At the beginning, it was an extension of the English or British literature. Okay, and it was sort of an imitation of the British literature. And soon, soon this type of literature started to have its own form, its unique form, its unique characteristics, and has its own, innovative writers, creative writers. So the real American literature, in fact, as an independent type of literature, started, let's say, in the beginning of the 19th century. That means 19th century means 1800 and on. Okay, in the beginning of 19th century is to be considered the real beginning of the independent, okay, distinctive type of literature, as a literature of its own characteristics, as a unique type of literature. And at the beginning, people, our writers of that time, at the beginning, they were, they talked mainly of, at the beginning they had just two main topics that they used to deal with. One of them is the early American settlers. One of the major topics used to be discussed in American literature is the early American settlers. And then the other topic is religious questions, to about religion and discussing religious questions. We have here on this page, as you see, we have different names, and these are, of course, important names to be remembered. Some consider, let's say, especially when it comes to talk about, people, writers who are first in doing this, first in doing that, and we have to remember also for the final exam the names of these writers. Some important dates, especially the dates of their birth or death, or birth and death, and then at least one or two of their, literary products. So here we have Captain John Smith is considered to be, some they consider Captain John Smith to be the first American author, and when he wrote what? General History of Virginia. Okay? General History, this is his book, General History of Virginia, and in another book is called New England, and then the Summer Isles. That was in 1624. Similar writers also of interest include Daniel Cox, John Hammond, Gabriel Thomas, George Percy, Daniel Denton, Thomas Ashe, John Lawson, and William Strachey. These are also early famous American writers. Okay, poetry was also written in those days by other, famous poets, اللي هو poetry writers. Nicholas Noyes wrote doggerel verse. Doggerel verse here, doggerel means, funny, humorous type of poetry, verse poetry. Doggerel poetry, اللي هو doggerel verse is a type of humorous, funny poetry. Then we have Edward Taylor and Anne Bradstreet. These were popular, including Michael Wigglesworth was known for his best-selling poem, The Day of Doom. Okay. Then here again, next page, we have another list of famous names of early American literary writers, or writers of literature, especially, talk about, poems, besides, other types of writing, like writing journals, biographies, letters, and some fiction. Okay. So here to consider that, as it is said, in the first two lines, that although, the American literature is short as its history, the history of the United States is short, as you know, okay, because it's considered to be a new country, relatively speaking, okay, and that's why also the American literature is also short, okay. It's not something that that is deep in history known, as when compared to other types of literature like the British literature or the English literature. So the American literature in terms of time is short as its history, but that doesn't mean it's not something that is of worth or of value. It's short as its history, but it's a lively type of literature, and it's what they call here colorful, and it's great, and it has great writers and the great pieces of literature, okay, because they were able, the writers, the American writers were able to make their own unique style of literature, and not to be anymore, imitators of the English literature. Okay, here we have some famous names that you really need to remember and memorize. Okay, like here, number one, as we say, American author was Benjamin Franklin. Okay, this is one of the most famous. Okay, and this is a famous name to be remembered. Benjamin Franklin, whose witty aphorisms and sound advice written in the yearly journal Poor Richard's Almanac helped shape ideas of what it means to be an American. Okay, Benjamin Franklin, okay, wrote, witty aphorisms. اللي هو witty means clever aphorisms. Aphorisms just like, what we call proverbs or wise sayings. And in that almanac, okay, almanac is sort of a book, that looks like a calendar or a dictionary or a handbook. In this book, he wrote about what it means to be an American. اللي هو Poor Richard's Almanac by Benjamin Franklin. And also The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was the first American to gain an international literary reputation. Another product, book also by Washington Irving. And Washington Irving is also another famous literary figure in the United States or in American literature. Washington Irving writing The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and that was one of the first, or is considered to be the first American to be known all over the world or internationally outside the United States. Then we have James Fenimore Cooper's verbal landscapes in his what? Leather-stocking tales. Okay, James Fenimore Cooper's, okay, his verbal landscapes في his tales or his book that's called Leather-stocking Tales. Okay, in this he talks about captured the nation's vast. That was a very beautiful book, and it was sort of a great beauty. And then we have also Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. And here we come to Emily Dickinson. We have also to stop because it will be one of the figures that we'll discuss later, and it has to be remembered very well. Emily Dickinson is a very famous literary figure in the United States and in the American literature. Emily Dickinson broke from poetic tradition and brought a sense of individuality to the nation's literature. Okay, another famous figure is Mark Twain. Mark Twain is also to be remembered. Okay, and there'll be some of the questions in the topics for discussion that you need to answer. Soon they'll be available for you. They'll be about these figures, looking for biographies about these figures, and then to memorize the most important parts of their life. So Mark Twain is also a very famous figure in literature, in American literature, and captivates readers with his unique and uniquely American humor and insight. Okay, he was famous and he captivates the readers. He attracted the attention because of his exciting, interesting insights and thoughts and writing. If we have also Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway, another figure, Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway is also very important in American literature. Then we have some of the modern literatures. Some of the modern writers like Toni Morrison and Cormac McCarthy. Okay, these also continue to make American literature relevant and exciting in the modern days. Then next page, again talking about the same topic. As I have just said, although the period, okay, of the American literature, okay, is short, but still it was able, the literature of the United States, or the American literature, was able to produce or to introduce, great writers. Okay, it was able to introduce great writers to the United States and to the whole world with masterpieces in literature. with great pieces of literature in poetry, in fiction, and in drama. Okay, as also I said before, the products of these writers, or most of the American writers, started as a sort of imitation of the British English, well, English literature. Then, by the time they were able to make their own identity and to make their own unique style, unique American style, and to be independent in their type of literature, and in terms of themes and form. Okay. Next slide and next page. Okay, here talks about that most critics hold that the history of American literature, this is important because this is what we are going to do from the second lecture and on. Okay, the lectures are divided into these parts. Okay, because this is not, of course, final and the only way to divide the American literature, but it is one of the ways and one of the most common ways that people, our specialists, our people specialized in literature, divide the American literature. So the American literature is divided into 6 parts, and this is how we are going to do in this course. The course will be divided into these different parts. We'll take each part separately, and then we will study examples of each part, of each movement. These parts, orderly in terms of time and appearance, we start with the colonial period as number 1, then Romanticism, then Realism, then Naturalism, then Modernism, and then Postmodernism. Okay, then after period, or the movement after modernism. Okay, so as it is said here, although the American literature, the real American literature started, it did not start, the real, this is important, the real American literature did not start until, okay, the 18th century, okay, until the 18th century. But still, we always consider the colonial the colonial period as the preparatory introduction to American literature, was the step, okay, as a preparatory, okay, a step that prepares, okay, that introduces, okay, the art of literature in the United States. American literature is written. What is it here? If you want to define American literature, okay, what is it? Okay, American literature is the written or literary work, work produced in the area of the United States and its preceding colonies. This is simply speaking when we define American literature. So it is the written or literary work produced in the area of the United States and its preceding colonies, the colonies before establishing the United States, because as we said before in the beginning, that the United States started as a number of colonies. Then after some revolutionary wars, these colonies united to be as one country, which is called now the United States. During its early history, America was a series of British colonies. This is something we have already mentioned, on the eastern coast of the what is called presently in the present days the United States. Therefore, its literary tradition begins as linked to the border tradition of English literature. Okay, it's sort of an imitation. This is also an important point, and this is I've already said that and repeated maybe twice or more. Literature of the United States اللي هو is just in the its literary tradition اللي هو American literature begins as linked to the border tradition of English literature, as an extension, as an imitation of English literature. Okay, so here when we talk about, when we say English literature, please, you have to remember that's what we mean something against American literature. We say English literature, we mean English literature, British English literature. So you have to please to remember this term. So the American literature, after a period of time of being sort of an imitative, sort of an imitative type of literature, started soon to have its own unique style, its own style and literature with its own characteristics. Next, and could be last, or before last, talking about unique style of the American literature. Most of what is mentioned on this page are, most what is mentioned here is just example. These are all examples of famous writers with their products, in the American literature as being, writers with unique American style, something that is considered to be innovative, not imitative. The war, of the 1812, that was sort of, a war that, a war that was between the United States, or people of the United States and the colonists, England and Ireland. There was a war in 1812 and ended, in 1815 by, a peace treaty. And, from that, after that war, American literature and culture, a number of key new literary figures emerged. From that war, and because of that war and because of the desire of producing unique American literature, a number of literary figures emerged. Because of that war between England and America from one side, and England and Ireland from the other, in 1812, and the increasing desire of having a unique, special type of literature, American literature, many key literary figures, many famous literary figures appeared, and these could be, some of them here we have them here mentioned to you, and you need to remember these names and with their works, literary works. Here we have number one is Washington Irving, William Cullen Bryant, James Fenimore Cooper, and Edgar Allan Poe. Some have already been mentioned to you in previous pages. Here we have a new figure that you need to remember very well, Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is also an important figure you need to remember. We have Irving, often considered to be, Irving is important because he is considered to be what? The first writer to develop a unique American style. طبعا this is debatable, but a lot consider Irving to be what? The first writer to develop a unique American style. And he wrote what? Humorous works like Salama Gandhi and the satire A History of New York by Diedrich Knickerbocker. these two books. These are humorous books, okay, funny books, okay. And Salamagandi يعني it's a kind of salad, you know. لما واحد يقول الله هذا سلطة شغل سلطة يعني, because this Salamagandi, this type of salad is يعني could be a strange type of salad because it includes everything. It includes, you know, vegetables, fruits, eggs, meat, seafood, a lot of different things. So that's Salamagandi, okay. So this is a humorous work, okay. And the satire, okay, A History of New York by Dadrich Knickerbocker, okay, in 1809. Then we have Brian wrote early romantic and nature-inspired poetry, which evolved away from their European origins. Okay, they were يعني the poems or the type of poetry Brian wrote has its own characteristics, has its own theme, form, and it wasn't, you know, any sort of imitation of, you know, English literature. In 1832, we have Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, very important. Edgar Allan Poe began writing short stories, including The Mask of the Red Death, one of his famous pieces of fiction, and then The Pit and the Pendulum, okay, pendulum, the what they call the hand of the clock, okay, اللي هو رقاص الساعة. The Fall of the House of Usher and the Murders in the Rue Morgue, or Morgue. Okay, these are famous stories of Edgar Allan Poe. Then that explore previously hidden levels of human psychology and push the boundaries of fiction toward mystery and fantasy. From Edgar Allan Poe, okay, it was a great push, okay, toward boundaries of fiction, okay, fiction towards mystery and fantasy. Then we have also Cooper's Landstocking Tales, okay, Cooper's Tales, okay, leather stocking tales, his book, and then another book called Natty Bamboo, which includes also that the last of the Mohegans or Mohicans, okay, Mohegans the Indian tribes, okay, or the what they call also, what they are called sometimes the Native Americans, or sometimes they are also called the Red Indians, okay, Mohicans or Mohegans, okay, were popular both in new country and abroad. And the last part of this lecture comes to its end, you know, on the last slide. Here, some more examples of writers of the American literature, and some are, of course, here on very important to be remembered. Okay, some humorous writers were also popular and included, okay, Seba Smith and Benjamin B. Shillaber in New England, and Davy Crockett, Augustus Baldwin Longstreet, Johnson J. Hooper, Thomas Banks Thorpe, and George Washington Harris, writing about the American frontier, اللي هي ايش borders, writing about American borders. Okay, these are humorous writers. These are names also, يعني to be remembered, but of course there are some who are more important than the others. Okay, this is يعني you may consider a sort of a general and in a way brief introduction to the American literature. I hope, you know, it's clear. You please read it again on the slides. If you have questions, please you let me know, and you know how to contact me. Okay, we call it a class. Thank you very much, and see you soon in the second lecture in another class. Assalamu alaikum.